Of today's Daf Yomi, dedicated for a Shmira for the Chayalim, Hatzalah for the Shvuyim, Yeshua for Am Yisrael. We're going to start in the bottom of 116b as we come to the very end of this incredible Masechta. Incredible Masechta, which is just such a privilege for us to study, that Hashem Yisparach has given us this beautiful Masechta to study. It had said in the Mishnah that if a person steals a field from his friend, and then the government or the mafiosos come and seize it, if this was something that was a plague all over the country, then he could just say to the guy, well, here's your field back, meaning to say, it would have been stolen from you also, so I don't have to pay you. But let's say, says the Mishnah, if it was on account of the robber, then he has to give him a new field. So what does that phrase mean? Imach masagazlan. If it was on account of the robber, he has to give him a new field. Hey, chidami, what's this mean? So it says the Gemara on 116b, 8 lines from the bottom. If it's because it happened that they stole his land, but they didn't steal everybody else's. We learned this from the initial clause, that if it was something that was going on all over the country, then he doesn't have to pay. In Makas Medina, if it was because of the whole country, then he doesn't have to pay. But if it wasn't for the whole country, then he has to pay. So what are we talking about when it says if it was on account of the robber? So Gemara says, no, this guy showed mafiosos, or showed the government this other person's property. And then it's called Dina de Garmi, he caused them to be able to steal it. So it says the Gemara, Lishna Achrina, and therefore he's responsible. Alternative version is, the strong man, the mafiosos, forced him. They said to him, show us your land. And he showed them this other guy's land along with his land. So therefore he has to pay. There was a man who showed the storage of wheat, he showed where the Reish Kusa kept their wheat. So then they confiscated it, and the Reish Kusa lost all their money. So Asla Kame to Rav Nachman. The guy was brought to Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman made him pay for the damages that he caused by being an informant. So Yasser Rav Yosef Achore de Rav Huna Barchia, Yasser Rav Huna Barchia Kamed Rav Nachman. So Rav Yosef and Rav Huna Barchia were sitting there, and Amoy Rav Huna Barchia or Rav Nachman. So Rav Huna Barchia said to Rav Nachman, Dino Kanasa, is this the actual law, or are you just penalizing him? Amoy Masnisani, Rav Nachman says it's our Mishnah. Ditanan, Emach Masagaz, Chayev Ramilos Sadeh, Ukimna de Yehuye. No, our Mishnah says that if you showed him where the land was, then you have to pay for it. So therefore, it's the dina, it's the law. So this guy showed him where the Rish Kutz's property was. He has to pay. Basar dinafak after Rav Nachman left. So Amalei Rav Yosef or Rav Huna Barchia, Rav Yosef says to Rav Huna, what do you care in Idina Ikanas on the top of 117a? What do you care if it's a law or if it's a penalty? Idina Gamrina Mine, Ikanasa will Gamrina Mine. So Huna Barchia responds, because if it would be the law, we could learn out from it to other cases. But if it's just a penalty, then it's as they say, a one-off. Then it's a one-time thing, and we're not going to learn it from it. Maybe that this guy was accustomed to doing this, and so therefore we can't learn from this to other cases. Umana Tamar de Bikanasa lo Gamrina. The Gemara says, what's your source for the idea that Minat Tamra from a kanas, from a penalty, you can't learn out? What's your source? The Gemara says, well, it's from a price. At first, they said that somebody who takes somebody else's property and makes it tamei, takes his wine, makes it tamei, and therefore he can't use it. If it was, let's see, truma, he wouldn't be able to drink it, or menasech, or he makes the wine prohibited because it's idolatry. At first, they said if somebody did that, then he's responsible to pay. So then they went back and they said, that not only that, but also somebody who is medameya. What's medameya? That he takes the truma, which can only be by a kohen, he mixes it with the chulin, And so now the chulin can also only be in by kohen because it's mixed up with the truma, which means to say chazru in or chazru lo. But that means you have to go back and specifically say also the medameya has to pay my time. And what's the reason why they have to specifically go back? Amishum the kanaso. It must be that the reason why he has to pay is because even though it's indirect, it's because it's a penalty. The kanaso lo gamrina mine, and we can't learn it out from a kanas, from a penalty. So this is a proof that you can't learn out from a penalty. Gemara says no, that's not the reason why they have to go back. Meikara savri at first. They're of the opinion. At first, he said we're only going to be concerned about a great loss, like you make it tameh or you make it menaseach, we make it idolatry. But we're not going to be concerned about medameh, where the kohen could still drink it. Right, so therefore, for a small amount of money, we won't make him pay. They're also concerned if you do a small loss that you have to pay. And so that's why they went back and included Medamea in this law. Gemara says, Aini, is it really the case that is this really the case? Is it really the case that we can learn from one penalty to another penalty? Is that really the case? The father Rabbi Avin taught at first they would say, at first they said that somebody makes something tamei or mixes it up with the truma and the chulin has to pay. Then they said also the menasech, which means this is idolatry. Chazru, it means they went back and they said it. And what's the reason? Chazru in, well, chazru lo. But if they didn't go back and say it, they wouldn't have to pay my time. But what's the reasoning? Isn't it because we can't learn out from a penalty, and so therefore they need to come back and say the yayin nesach, idolatrous wine, from a specific ruling? Gemara says no. Meikrara savri k'Rabbi Avin. At first, they followed the position of Rabbi Avin elsewhere. Well, besov savri k'Rabbi Yirmiyah. In the end, they followed the position of Rabbi Yirmiyah. It's interesting because the brisa was taught by the father of Rabbi Avin. So at first they followed the reasoning that Rabbi Avin would accept later on. In the end, they followed the position of Rabbi Yirmiyah. Meikara savre. At first they were of the position Rabbi Avin, Dama Rabbi Avin, Zara Chaitz Mitchilas Arba, Ubasofa Arba, Bekara Shiran Balichaso Patar. Shari Akira Tzorachanahi, Umischayev ben Avshel. So at first they followed a position of Rabbi Avin from a law about Shabbos, that we know, first of all, as a background, that you're not allowed to carry something 4 amos in the public domain, liable for Shabbos, and that you'd be liable for death. But we also say the principle of Kimle B'Derav Minei, that if you do a more severe penalty, you're exempt from the minor penalty, which in this case is the payment. So let's say you shoot an arrow over 4 amos, and it tears a silk garment while it's traveling, you're going to be exempt because they're all part of one action. And so therefore, when he picks it up, until he drops it, he's going to be responsible. And so therefore, they thought at the beginning that you wouldn't have to pay for the wine, because when you picked up the wine until you did the yain nesach, it's all part of the same action of idolatry, and so therefore you're not responsible for the payment. But it was so. But in the end, Savak Rabbi Yirmiyah, they followed the position of Rabbi Yirmiyah, who says Mishas Bava Kamma. From the moment you picked it up, you're responsible to pay for the yayin nesach. That's when you stole it. Mishas Bava Kamma Yechayev Mamon. That's what you have to pay for the yayin nesach. But Ubesof, then in the end, they held like Rabbi Yirmiyah. So in the end, they held like Rabbi Yirmiyah says, Mishas Bava Kamma. The moment you picked it up, you're responsible to pay for the yayin nesach. And Mischayev ben Avshel, because you wouldn't be responsible for idolatry, lo aviat shas nisach, until you actually do the libation. And that's why they were chazru l'omar, not because you can't learn from a kanas. Rafuna bar Yehuda iklu bei Avyoni. He came to Avyoni, aslakame to Rava. He came to Rava and he said, "I'm like kum as ma'isa bal yadcha." So Rafuna bar Yehuda says, "You got anything new you guys are discussing? What's the hak? What's the raid in the base medrash?" Armla Yisrael shansu ovdei kochavim. Yeah, we're talking about a Jew who the idolaters forced. So he showed them where his friend's money was. I said he has to pay because it's grama ben nezikin. indirect damages, Dina de Garmi, so he's responsible. He says, go back and reverse it. That's what Rafuna Bar Yehuda said to Rava. The Tanya we learned Yisrael Shansu over the Kochavim Haram Chaver Potter. There he's exempt. We have a Bryce says he's exempt. But if he lifted up explicitly and gave to them, he's responsible. Amar Rabba or Rava, whoever it is, if he showed it directly on his own, it's like he picked it up directly, and so therefore he would be responsible. So he supports Rava's position, Rabba or Rava. Who gathered on two of the Kochavim? So there was a man, the idolaters turned into an informant. And he showed them where the wine was of basically of Rav Mari, the son of Rav Pinchas, son of Rav Chisda. Dari va'amte ba'adan. So they weren't enough. They weren't satisfied that he just had to show them where it was. Then they made him lift it up and carry it with them. Dari va'amta ba'adayu. And indeed, he picked it up and he carried it with them. So he had to do that. Also, coming to Rav Ashi, Patrine. He came to Rav Ashi. Rav Ashi said, you don't have to pay. Didn't we learn that if you picked it up, you're responsible? That's only a case where it wasn't that basically where they didn't force him to, where he went up on his own and brought it to them. But where they forced it to him from the beginning, mikla kalya. So then it's like it's destroyed. And so therefore he's just like their porter, their transporter, so he's not going to be responsible. But what about the following case? So he says, pass me this pakia amir, this basically like this bundle of straw or this cluster of grapes. When he passes it over to him, he's going to be responsible. And so we see from here, even though he didn't initially show it, since he passed it over, he's responsible. Mar says, no, that case is different. Betray Ivrei Nara. He's standing on two sides of the river. And so therefore, they couldn't get it without his help. They could not be the Ketani Hoshit Velotani Tanan. That's why it says the word Hoshit. He passed over. It didn't say he gave Shmamina. Hoshuta Dave Minatzo Betray. So there was a traps for the animals that two people were fighting over. One said it's mine, the other one said it's mine. So also now this is like Solomon's wisdom with the two babies. One of them went. He showed it to the basically to the tax collector of the king. And Amar Bai Yachol Omar Anaki Masri Tidi Masri. So Abai said he's not going to be responsible to pay because he could always claim that which I handed over was mine. And so therefore I'm exempt. So I'm like, Rabba, no, but Kol Kamine, you think you could do that? You have to go to court first. He has to go we excommunicate him until he goes to court and he proves that it's his. Otherwise, we excommunicate him and say, really, you have to pay for the damage you caused. So now we have a very powerful story. There was a man who was showing the mafiosos or the government where his friend's straw was. Also coming to Rav, so they brought him to Rav. Rav says, Lo tafre, don't show it. I'm like, Machvina. He says, I'm going to show it. Yosef Rav Kahana kamei to Rav Shamta. So Rav Kahana was sitting there. Shamte lekuye mine. Basically broke his neck. Kari Rav Ilay, and Rav said about Rav Kahana, so Rav Kahana killed him. Banecha orfu shachvu berosh kol chutzos keto mechmar. That your children are tired, they're lying down in their courtyards like a bull in a trap. Matozek even shenafel b'mechmar emerach. Just like a bull, once it falls into the trap, we don't have mercy. Have mammon shel Yisrael. Also, the money of the Jews, given shenafel b'yadov v'kochavim emerach. The idolaters wouldn't have had mercy on us. Meaning to say you had no choice to kill him because they would have killed us if they found the money and they would have killed us and taken everything and killed us anyway. Rav Kahana in the Yavid Parsi. So Rav Kahana said, until today, there were Persians, they looked the other way if we did this. Yavani, but now there are the Greeks, the Kabtu, Ashvichos Damim. They won't let us do this. They won't let us execute informants. V'amri Meradim, they're going to call us murderers. Kum Sako Ara, get up. Go up to the land of Israel. Sako Ara de Israel, get up and go to the land of Israel. V'kiva Olech. And Rav said to Rav Kahana, accept upon yourself, Delo Tikshi Rabbi Yochanan Sheva Shanin, that you don't ask Rabbi Yochanan for 7 years, because Rav Kahana, the commentaries say he did something wrong. Even though he was justified in executing him, he should have asked his Rebbe first if that's what he should do. Also, he found Reish Lakish he was sitting there and he was going over the shir for the day, the Masechta. He's teaching to the rabbis. Amar Lo. So Rav Kahana said, Reish Lakish, where's Reish Lakish? Amar Way, Amai. They said, why do you want him? Amar Lo. Hi kusha, hi kusha. I have this difficulty with what he said in this difficulty. Hi piruka, and I have this answer to his question and this answer to his question. Amar Lo Reish Lakish. So they told Reish Lakish what's going on. Also Reish Lakish went. Amar Lo Rabbi Yochanan. They said to Rabbi Yochanan, an Ari al Bava, a lion has come up from Babylon. La'ayin Mar ben Mesifta, go study the text. Go study the text because for tomorrow's shir. Be prepared for tomorrow's shir. Bava Kamma. The next day they sat Rav Kahana in the front row in front of Rabbi Yochanan. Amar Shmaitita v'lo ikshi. He said a teaching, and Rav Kahana didn't challenge it. Shmaitita v'lo ikshi, a teaching and didn't challenge it. An chosei achorei sheva dari. They put him 7 rows back ad usvei bedari basra until he sat in the last row. Amar Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish Arisha Amra Nasa Shual. This lion, you're talking about a lion? He's just a fox. He doesn't know anything. Rav Kahana said, Amar Yehi Rav Adani Sheva Dari Avichiu of Sheva Shan. He said, maybe you will God these 7 rows that I had to go back to. Maybe you replace the 7 years that the Amrli Rav that Rav said that I had to keep my mouth shut. So now he got up. Kamma Kara, he got up to talk. Amar Nahadar Amar Bereisha. He said, can you repeat your shir? Amar Shmadita. So Rabbi Yochanan said a teaching. Rav Kahana challenged it. Ukmei B'Dara Kamma, they put him in the front row. Amar Shmadita, he said another teaching, the Ikshi, and he again challenged it. Rabbi Yochanan Avayatzev Asheva Bistriki. Rabbi Yochanan was sitting on 7 cushions. Shafle Chada Bistrakami Tute. They removed one of the cushions. Amar Shmadita, he said a teaching, the Ikshile. They kept challenging him. Ad Shalfiwe Kul Bistrakum Bitute, until they removed all the cushions from underneath him. Ad Yosef al Ara, until he was sitting on the ground. Rabbi Yochanan Gavra Sabahava. He was an older man. His eyebrows are very heavy. They were covering his eyes. He said, lift up my eyes, let me see. They lifted it up with like a silver spoon. He saw Rav Kahana had this condition that he had been struck, and so his lips were torn. So what did he do there? He thought he's laughing at me. Rabbi Yochanan was upset. And as a result of this, Rav Kahana died. The next day, Rabbi Yochanan said to Rabbanan, did you see what this Babylonian did to me? He was laughing at me. They said, no, he wasn't. That's just the way he looks. Rabbi Yochanan goes up to the cave. Hadra, or on the top of 117b, they saw that there was Hadra Achna. They saw that there was a snake surrounding the cave. Amroi Achna Achna Pasach Pumech Vikane Sarav Eitzaltam. Said, snake, open up your mouth. Let the teacher go visit a student. Well, Pasach, the snake didn't open the mouth. He says, Vikane Chaver Eitzalchaver. When a colleague visited another colleague. Well, Pasach, the snake didn't open his mouth. Vikane Talmud Eitzal says, let the student visit the Rebbe. Pasach. He opened up his mouth and by Rachme. So Rabbi Yochanan Davin v'ukme. He resurrected Rav Kahana. Amarei Avi Adana the darke demar achiv ochal shadati. He said, if I'd only known that this is the way you look, I never would have been upset. Hashta leisi mar ba'adan. So come back with us, study. Amarei If you could pray for me that I won't die again, I'll go with you. Otherwise, I won't go. So he says the reason is I'm not going to go with you again because since the time has passed, therefore the time for the miracle has passed as well. Maybe I won't have another miracle. So Tiyare, so Rabbi Yochanan woke him up. Rabbi Yochanan woke him up from his sleep, and Rabbi Yochanan said, Ukme Shaile kol Sveka Davile. He asked him all the questions he had, Pashtinu Nihile, and he answered them. And Hainu Dama Rabbi Yochanan, this is what Rabbi Yochanan says, Dilachon Amri, that I used to say to you students in Israel, that the Torah is yours, meaning to say, I thought that you guys were the sharpest. But now I say Dilahoni, and now I say it's theirs. I say it's theirs. So now we have a couple more stories. There's obviously a lot to talk about that story. Very powerful story, but the fact that Rabbi Yochanan was able to recognize the greatness of Rav Kahana shows the humility of Rabbi Yochanan. So there was a person who showed the mafiosos the silk garment of Rabbi Abba. Yosef Rabbi Abba, Rabbi Chanina Bar Papa, Rabbi Yisrael Nafal, Yosef Rabbi Yoah Gabayo. Several chiyuve, they said, okay, make him pay. From the Mishnah Sanhedrin, if you make the judgment, you make the person who's innocent guilty or guilty innocent. He has to pay, even though he did it in direct damages. So too here also, he showed him the garment, he should have to pay. So Amar Rabbi Yehuda, no, that's only if he actually does a physical action. So Zil Agabe Rabbi Shimon. So they said to him, go to Rabbi Shimon, Yakim, Rabbi Lazar, and Padas, the Daini Dina de Garmi. They actually say, not like us, they say that if you come with a Dina de Garmi, this indirect damages, we're going to hold you responsible. Also, Gabai went to them, Chive, Mimas Nisan. Indeed, Rabbi Shimon ben Yakim, so said, hold on one second. So he said, they went to him, Rabbi Shimon ben Yakim said that they have to pay, and he said from our Mishnah, that exactly like our Mishnah said that the case in which you're responsible is where you showed the government this other guy's field, and therefore you have to pay for it. There was a person that gave a silver cup to him as a deposit. The robbers came to him, and Chakla, he took it, Yavu, he gave it to them. Also coming to Rabba, Patra, Rabba said, you don't have to pay for it. I'm like, isn't this guy saving himself with the money of his friend? You should have to pay. No, we look, if he was a wealthy man, then they came for him. Below, but if he wasn't a wealthy man, then he came for his money. And since he just came for, if he wasn't a wealthy man, they came for the silver cup. And so therefore he shouldn't have to pay. Excuse me. There was a person who they deposited with him a wallet to use to ransom hostages. So the robber showed up at his house and he gave them this wallet. Also coming to Rava, Pasha. Rava said, you're exempt. Isn't he saving himself by the money of his friend? Yeah, but the money was to save people. And there's no better way to save hostages than this was direct. They're about to kill him. So he gave them the money to the hostages. For the hostages. There was a guy who was bringing his donkey onto a ferry. He brought his donkey onto a ferry. So, and he did this. He brought his donkey onto the ferry. Before the people, other people went up. He did it before the other people went up. So then the ship was about to sink. Also Gavre. So then another person came along. He took this other guy's donkey and he threw it into river and drowned it. Asa Kama de Rava Patra. Rava said, you're exempt. He saved himself with his friend's money. So he says, no. This guy, this donkey was a rodef, was pursuing you. And so since it was pursuing you, if somebody's pursuing you, you're allowed to break his utensil, as we're about to learn. So, as Rabba taught, rodef shaya rodef achar chavero hargo. Let's say you have a pursuer that's pursuing another person to kill him. Vishiber has to kill him, and he breaks the utensils while he's running after him. Bain shall nirdaf bain shall kol adam pater. Then this rodef, this guy was trying to kill somebody, is exempt. Because since he's liable for death penalty, because he's trying to kill him at that moment, therefore he's exempt from the monetary penalty. But Nirdaf, somebody is being pursued, Shiber has a kilim shal rodef. If he breaks the rodef's utensils, Potter is exempt. You're allowed to kill him, so of course you can destroy his money. So we can't say the money is more precious than the body. But if he breaks somebody else's utensils, he's responsible. Now how to save yourself with the money of his friend. The rodef shaya rodef acha rodef. Let's say you have a pursuer that was pursuing after somebody else lahatzil to save him. Shiber kelim, and he broke utensil. Ben shel nordaf, ben shel kol adam, potter. And so let's say one other person there's a rodef who's running to kill somebody, and a different guy gets involved and tries to stop the guy from killing him. So we say under these cases, no matter whose utensils he breaks, he's going to be exempt. But that's not technically from the law. If you're not going to say this, there's nobody's going to get involved because everybody's going to say, I don't want my liability. There's a special exemption that if somebody sees somebody else trying to kill somebody and you go in and you break something, you're going to be exempt, so that we encourage you to do it again in the future. Okay, we'll stop here. Today's beautiful daf. Anybody have any questions? I'm happy to address.